Welcome to PlotLines, where we'll use our over 30 years of experience in real estate communications to uncover the real stories behind real estate. I'm Heather Crowell.
And I'm Britni Acriveau. Dive in with us as we invite guests to break down the ever-changing landscapes of real estate together. Welcome back to PlotLines. We're so thrilled today to be joined by two guests. We have Kathy McQuilkin and Eric Rehling, both with Tri-County Suburban REALTORS. Eric and Kathy, thanks so much for being with us today.
Sure thing.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah, so we have a lot to discuss today about the housing market, which certainly has had its fair share of coverage in the press. So we want to get to that, but just to start things off, and Kathy, maybe we start with you. Can you just tell us a little bit about yourself, your involvement in Tri-County Suburban REALTORS, your work as a realtor in the region, all that good stuff?
Absolutely. My name is Kathy McQuilkin, as you noted. I have been a realtor serving southeastern Pennsylvania for over 45 years. I've enjoyed serving in volunteer leadership at my local association, Tri-County Suburban REALTORS. I have served as the 2017 president of the Pennsylvania Association of Realtors.
Awesome.
Served our local and regional public policy and advocacy group, the Suburban Realtors Alliance, and the National Association of Realtors.
Wow. So you just have a little bit going on. Eric, what about you?
So I have been in the real estate industry since about 2000, 2001. So, just coming up on, I guess, about 25 years or so. Yeah. And Kathy set a wonderful example. She's an awesome leader for sure. Does a lot for our industry. I am currently serving as the treasurer of the state association, the Pennsylvania Association of Realtors. So,
amazing.
If all goes well, I'll kind of move up the chairs there. I'm also involved at the national level and have served as a local board president of a association that merged with Suburban West to become Tri-County. So
awesome. Okay.
that was a couple of years back. Yeah.
Okay.
Awesome. Well, as you know, the purpose of the show is to evaluate and consider the headlines out there. And there's no shortage of headlines about the housing market, right? There haven't been. There's just a ton out there. So in particular in this market. So we're hoping that you guys can help us break down, understand what is the reality on the streets. Talk to us about home availability, home prices, and just, the affordability, I guess, of housing as well. And especially in your markets where you're the experts.
Kathy, you want to fire away at that?
Chime in first? Okay. Well, obviously, housing's always important.
Yeah.
Yes.
So while we're still hearing that there's tight inventory and high prices as a much discussed topic, there has been some softening of the price rises.
Okay.
In certain ranges and in some areas.
Okay.
We've had some lengthening of days on the market, but we do have a slight rise in overall inventory. So value and total cost of ownership is still a dominant theme and topic in our current marketplace.
Yeah, for sure. And I would just, we're saying the same thing in our marketplace as what Kathy's talking about. And I think, when you start to see the fragmentation of the market, we're coming out of the past 3-4 years where overwhelmingly in all areas, there was a very heavy sell, the cards were in the seller's favor. And as that starts to change, I think it just becomes really that much more critical for a consumer to want to engage with a realtor and understand, because what's happened to your friend who lives, up the street in a different price point might not be the market that you're in anymore. So, that these pockets really, really start to, you got to be an expert in your area to really understand what's going on, as opposed to the past couple of years. It was more of a blanket answer.
Yeah. We want to dive into that a little bit more, right? Like this value of a realtor, and it's different than just working with an agent or doing it on your own. But obviously a lot of changes have come with the National Association of National Association of Realtors settlement and some of the changes that have occurred since then. So maybe we start with that, talk through just some of those changes that have occurred for anyone who might not be familiar. And then we kind of want to open up the conversation to why does that make it so much more important now to work with someone like yourselves who is an expert in the market and who is a licensed realtor. Whoever wants to get started on that.
You know what? How about if I start with the value of the realtor?
Sure.
And Eric, if you don't mind, pipe in with some of the changes, basically the bricks and sticks and framework of the market in which we reside currently. So a realtor is different than a licensee. A realtor subscribes to an increased code of ethics.
Yep.
The value of having a realtor at your side during this ever-changing and very complex marketplace today is more valuable than ever before. It matters not whether you're a buyer, having the realtor as your advocate, as you're analyzing the market, the area, the home amenities, the value, creating and drafting the most logical offer for you, and then helping you through the presentation of the offer, hopeful acceptance of the offer, and then following that trail to a successful settlement.
Yep.
Same for the seller. Having an experienced realtor to create that analysis, again, of your area, of the marketplace, of your amenities and your value, designing and launching a marketing plan to find the most qualified and most probable purchaser for your home, negotiating to get the best price and terms for you, and then again, navigating that path to a smooth and fulfilling closing.
Yeah, and I would just say, one, for the settlement, what is the NAR settlement? What does that mean to our consumers, or what does that mean to us as realtors? I think there's two main takeaways. Number one, offers of compensation. So prior to the settlement, as a buyer agent and a member of the MLS, I could go into the MLS and I could see how much the seller was offering.
Okay.
Post-settlement, after August 17th, that cooperating compensation field has gone away in the MLS. So the number one is that there's no offers of compensation in the MLS. The MLS is the most widely used tool to help facilitate an open marketplace and to allow as many people as possible to know that your home is for sale.
Okay.
So that's the first main takeaway. The second main takeaway of the settlement is that a buyer and a realtor need to enter into a written agreement prior to touring a home. And I think while you talk about headlines and all that good stuff, there's so much other, you just boil it down to those are the main two changes to the industry.
Okay.
And, from a positive standpoint, I believe what it can do is it's going to create more conversations between the realtor and their client or their consumer. And I think that's ultimately the win. Whenever we can engage in more conversation, whether it's the buyer agent now calling the listing agent to discuss what that seller's position is going to be, or me as a buyer agent talking to my buyer about the compensation and how my compensation is going to work prior to them, seeing a house.
Yeah.
That's certainly a big takeaway and a positive for us and for the consumers.
So how, I guess, thank you for breaking that down. I think that was super helpful. How does that impact, if at all, the dynamic between the buyer and the seller and their sort of relationship? It may not, but I just does it impact that relationship at all?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I mean, if anything, I believe the potential impact between the buyer and seller is, more conversations or more negotiations.
Yeah.
So I think, the expectation, and again, part of this is as the market changes and the seller loses some of the leverage that they've had over the past couple of years, there's going to be more opportunity to structure, offers in a way that can benefit the buyer and seller. So I think ultimately where we could end up is more information that the seller has about the buyer and more information that the buyer has about the seller, because the conversations and the negotiation has been lengthy.
Right. Okay. That's
And,
interesting.
and I think, as Eric was mentioning, as the conversations are going forward, we will see negotiations and having the realtor's value exhibited to a greater extent. Compromise may become more of a commonplace maneuver in the negotiations than we've had in the last few years, because it's been a more one-sided seller's market.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's a great point.
That makes sense.
So with that, right, that's sort of been the narrative that the seller had the upper hand, so to speak, for a long time. Is that still what you're feeling in this Tri-County area? How is that shifting, or how has it stayed the same? We know that low inventory is still something that the area is really dealing with, but.
So one of the monikers we use in real estate is that all real estate is local.
Right.
I mentioned before, we see some softening of prices in certain areas, in certain price ranges.
Yep.
We are seeing more inventory enter the market. We are up about 16% from August of 24 to August of 23 for closed listings coming onto the market. That will impact, and I think, again, I'll use the word compromise as we're negotiating, something that we need to pay attention to. Still, total cost of ownership is a big concern. Inflation's a concern.
Yeah.
Especially for our first-time buyers and our moderate income buyers. But that's what the realtor's there to help them navigate.
Right. So I guess, is there any attribution to the, increase in inventory to, or correlation, I guess, not attribution, but between that increase and the finally easing of interest rates, which obviously reduces mortgage rates and makes, the market hopefully more liquid?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, part of, the inventory issue has been a long time coming. I mean, it's a combination of a few different things: a massive underbuilding of, in our country, population's going up, and we're not building enough to match that. So that was a piece of it kind of before we got into the hyper market during COVID.
Right.
But, then you had such low interest rates. So the other part of that inventory issue is, what they refer to, I believe, as in locked in sellers. You have a lot of sellers who, at 2 or 3% mortgages, while their family is growing, they're looking at such a low mortgage rate. They're just not they just don't.
Yeah. Why would you leave? Yeah.
Exactly. So certainly as the rates come down, down almost, 2 full percent, or at least 1.5 since the high point there, 18 months ago, 2 years ago, whatever it was. Yeah, that's certainly going to help with some of those sellers starting to say, hey, I know the rate might be higher, but I'm running out of space. It's time for me to move.
Right.
So I definitely think the interest rate is contributing to the increased inventory, that it's lower, so there's more buyers and more supply because sellers are willing to make that decision. I just think it's really important to understand, and again, why a realtor can help navigate the buying process or the selling process is there's just so many facets to each of these headlines. It's not just interest rates are high, that's our problem. It's not just we're not building enough, that's our problem. It's not just inflation. It's all of these pieces that have to be synthesized together to create a winning plan.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of nuances.
Sure.
Tell us about sort of the neighborhoods and the areas that you both operate in. Are there any in particular that have unique opportunities or challenges that you're watching closely?
So again, going back to the fact that all real estate is local, and that's across the board, nationwide, probably internationally, but with a big footprint like the association Tri-County Suburban REALTORS is within, there are micro factors that really do impact buyers and sellers, tenants and landlords. So we're fortunate in this area. It's a very diverse area. So whether it's a buyer that needs access to train or major transportation routes, employment centers, we can fulfill that. We have other areas that perhaps are a more suburban type area. You can look at the walkability. You can look at the amenities within a neighborhood, shopping, etc.
Yeah.
And yet we still have beautiful rural areas where those clients seek open space. They're looking for perhaps riding trails. They're looking for associated livestock facilities that are accessible to them. So we really have, from soup to nuts, an area that is vibrant and fulfills a lot of needs.
Yeah, I agree. I think the one factor that is in play, though we haven't seen it yet, being 40, 45 days from, the implementation of some of these changes that we've been talking about, the settlement changes, the perhaps that one of the unintended consequences is, how does our first-time home buyer price points, our more, our moderate income or more vulnerable population, how are they still going to be able to have the representation that they need, the buyer representation that they need to navigate the complexities of the market that we're talking about? So while there's no data to support that yet, I know that as a realtor community, we're definitely, aware of that, and we need to make sure that we are constantly, finding the right paths and the right solutions so those folks are not further squeezed out of home ownership. Because we have a history, there's a long history of there being a home ownership gap, and we need to make sure that this settlement doesn't cause that to increase, that gap to increase.
And those are great points, because we are at still the lowest point of first-time buyer participation in this market, and it is very concerning between the inventory and then the total cost of ownership, which includes things besides the home prices and the interest rates. We have to look at the insurance costs, look at their daily living costs, commuting costs, etc. So those are all huge concerns,
Right.
for our consumers and for us as realtors.
And that's all been kind of on the rise in the past few years. So, and I would think, that for a first-time home buyer, for any home buyer, I can speak to it, having bought homes in my life, that the value of having a realtor by your side to navigate the complex market, but even all of the steps and the intricacies, like, it's a huge investment. And I can't even fathom for the first time, in your life, buying a home, doing it on your own without, a professional to kind of walk you through the whole process.
But there are some headlines suggesting that right now, right? Like, should I just do it on my own? Why would I need one?
Yeah, that's wild.
Yeah.
For sure. And I think, to your point, Heather, think about all of that stress, and you're the first buyer in your whole family. It's the first generation that has the ability to buy. And so their network to lean on to ask those questions, if they're not represented, there's nowhere to turn. And while I think a realtor is important in any situation, if you are from a family that, there's multiple people within your family that have gone through the process, while I still don't think it's great because they went through a process during a different market, it's still a sounding board you have.
Sure.
If I'm the first person to buy, I have no sounding board, and that just creates so many more risks and complications.
But you're exactly right. It's about the market and the timing too. Somebody can, their experience in a certain market 10 years ago is not necessarily relevant today. So really interesting.
Well, you both hit on, a lot of the benefits that a realtor can offer to a consumer, but talk to us more about the benefits that Tri-County Suburban REALTORS offers to its members, such as yourselves.
I'm going to jump in with what is my favorite asset as a member.
Good.
And that's the educational opportunities that Tri-County Suburban REALTORS offers. It is elite. It includes, in your membership, many free webinars, seminars, and in-person instructions. It's very timely. It's current. It's absolutely necessary in this changing time
Yeah.
as we look at the settlement changes. Additionally, we have a top quality real estate school where you can choose specialized designations, specialized trainings in
Okay.
whatever market you wish to concentrate upon.
That's great.
So for me, I love to be educated so that I'm best protecting my consumers. And so that is, without a doubt, my number one
Yeah.
priority at Tri-County.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be my number one. But another one that I would highlight is, given the size of Tri-County, the footprint that it has and the affiliates, I
Yep.
know, sometimes you end up as a realtor in a situation that you're not the market expert necessarily. It's just something
Sure.
you
Yeah.
haven't run into before. And the ability to reach out to affiliates and expand your network and work with
Yeah.
somebody who has been through that same situation. So I think the affiliates and their knowledge bank is a huge benefit to all of us as members of Tri-County.
Amazing.
That makes total sense. Yeah. Okay. Well, we've never done this with two people. So we are here to rewrite headlines. So in a perfect world, what's the ideal headline for the housing market in this region and for the realtor community? We can take two headlines if you each want to go.
Okay. Cautious optimism for the real estate market. For buyers and sellers, I would say don't delay. Start your wealth building journey in real estate ownership today.
Okay.
I like it.
I had to lean on David Bowie. I'm going with changes as my headline, and because that's the reason why a market specialist, a realtor, is
Yeah.
important, because
Yep.
the market is almost never stagnant. I think sometimes we forget because we come home and we hang our hat, and we have family dinners, and we have all these memories inside our home, but we forget that the house that we're in is a part of a housing market, which by definition, a market is constantly changing.
Yeah.
It's on the rise or it's on the fall. And so
Yep.
to me, it's changes, and you want to be dialed into those changes, and you have the best opportunity to be dialed into those changes by talking to a realtor.
Okay.
I think we're all going to be singing that song for the rest of the day. Thanks, Eric.
My
Yeah, sorry
dog
about
is
that.
named after David Bowie. I love it.
Nice.
There you go. Well, thank you so much to both of you. We really appreciate all of these insights. Is there anything else either of you would like to add before we wrap up?
I would just say, we really appreciate the opportunity to chat with you. I think it's important that we continue to talk about, all of the topics. How do we get the gap of affordability? How do we shrink that? We have to attack that from many different avenues. And so I just applaud, both of you, and the opportunity to just let us chat about that and understand that collectively we can start to tackle some of the obstacles that are out there, but we have to maintain open dialogue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree, and I appreciate the opportunity, and certainly want to highlight that Tri-County Suburban Realtors is a really valuable partner for us as we practice, and it assists us in our service to the consumers. So shout out to them as well.
Yeah, definitely.
sure.
Well, thank you so much, Kathy and Eric. We appreciate your time.
This podcast is a production of Gregory FCA. If you enjoyed our discussion, please subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts